Meeting to order. First, I'd like to say the reason that I tabled assignment number 24-012, Chief of Staff position, is due to the number of emails and phone calls, not only that I received, but other council members have received on this. Felt like it was only fair to give everyone the opportunity to talk and to give the entire council the opportunity to share information with each other, because we seldom have the opportunity to do that. Mayor Feeney did ask me if he would have the opportunity to talk, and I told him certainly that would happen. So I think he is going to come. I'm not sure when, but we want to make sure that we hear from everyone that would like to say something about this before we decide to put it back on and make a decision. I apologize. Can you hear me? I guess I need to get it a little closer. I said we want to make sure that we give everyone the opportunity to speak that would like to talk this evening. But we're going to start out with council members, and then we'll move to audience participation. So we'll open it up to council members first to just openly share information, concerns that you have.
I can kind of start. So first, I just wanted to kind of go through what the ordinance is saying. So it has two sections to it. The first one is council hereby authorizes the mayor to fill the mayor's chief of staff position. So that's one part, is us authorizing him to fill that position. The second part is council hereby appropriates $70,000 for salary and benefits for the mayor's chief of staff position as followed, and it's coming out of unappropriated general fund into general fund mayor department head salaries. And the amount appropriated is $70,000. The anticipation is that would be enough to get through the end of the year. When you look at the pay range that we've been talking about, we don't have a formal request as far as how much exactly. $60,000 to $80,000 a year with benefits and insurance would be in the neighborhood of $105,000 to $130,000 a year annual salary for that position, just so that we all understand exactly what it is that we're talking about. So that's what the ordinance is in essence. So just to talk about it just a little bit. So you look over the last 30 to 40 years, the city population has not changed. We've been bouncing around 21 to 23,000 pretty much the last 30, 40 years, probably longer than that as well. So we've not seen an increase in the residents that we serve in this community. The city employees have actually decreased in the last 30 years from what they were back in the 80s and 90s. When we look at comparable cities, and when I looked at those, I looked at Athens, Circleville, Lancaster, Portsmouth, Washington Courthouse, and Xenia. 3 of those cities are smaller. 3 of those cities are larger than Chiillicothe in population. And they're all within basically an hour, hour and a half drive. Standalone cities, not attached to a large city like Columbus. None of those cities have a full-time chief of staff. Xenia does have an assistant city manager who's also the development director for the city. So it's a split position. When you look at the number of people that the other cities have on their management teams, Chiillicothe has the same or more than all of those cities. So we have plenty of people within the management team for the city administration at this time. We may just need to reallocate where those positions are being utilized. In the last 4 years, we've added 2 full-time positions to the management team. The plans and development director was authorized in 2021. It went from part-time to full-time. It had not been filled as a part-time position for many years. So we authorized a full-time position there, plus the salary for that person. And then I think it was last year, although I haven't got that data yet, is we also added an assistant to that office. While we've added positions within the management team, we've seen our safety services, police and fire departments continue to be understaffed since the early 2000s. Okay, the police now have less people than they had in the 1990s, while their workload has increased 2 to 3 times. 8 of those are currently on a federal grant. And when that grant expires sometime this year or first of next year, are we going to be able to afford 8 positions to keep them staffed at that level? And that level is not what they were at during the 1990s. They are, even with those 8 positions, they are still behind where they were back in the 1990s when they had when we had, what, a third of the workload? So think about that. The city administration's workload has not changed, but we've added positions there. There's still the same number of residents. There's less employees, but the police department has seen their workload increase 2 to 3 times with less people. The fire department, they have less people now than they had in the 1980s and 1990s. And again, their workload has increased 2 to 3 times in that time period. They now have 45 full-time employees. Back in the 1990s, they had 49 full-time employees. And they did less things back then. They didn't have the hazmat responsibility and some of their other things that they do now. A recent study conducted by Ross County on EMS shows that 5% of the time we need 3 or more squads in this city, and we rarely have 3 squads. At minimum staffing, we do not have 3 squads available. That means if you're having a heart attack or a stroke, or your house is on fire, or basically a heart attack or stroke, you may have an extremely delayed response for those people to get there while we are paying top dollar for our safety levies. And some of that money from general fund has to continue to support our police and fire departments, and it currently does. But we need more people in both those departments. We need to focus on safety service staffing and getting those up to safe levels, and then continue to grow those to get them to where we are a safer community. And we can not only meet the minimum demand, but we can be one of the better communities in Southern Ohio. We also, currently we have a number of other director jobs vacant in the city. We need to look at those positions as well and see if we have them funded properly to attract the right people, to bring people in that can help run this city and run those departments. And again, that will be a competing demand for those finances that should be going to police and fire and other places throughout the city. So in my opinion, at this time, we do not need a chief of staff position. We need better police and fire, and we need to look at our director positions and make sure that we have those properly funded. So my recommendation is for the rest of the council that we vote no on the chief of staff position. Thank you, Kathy.
I'd like to go next. So first off, I want to thank everyone for reaching out, or who did reach out about this position and us allocating the money for the position to be filled. For those who, and I think most of the folks in this room know a little bit about my history, but for those who don't know a little bit about my background, my husband grew up on the East End. He's a retired Navy Reserve Master at Arms Chief Petty Officer. He's a former U.S. Air Force Security Forces SWAT sniper and a former sheriff's deputy, as well as he served on the undercover narcotics team with the Drug Task Force. I'm a mother, a small business owner, and a runner. I don't necessarily look it, but I do slowly. I grew up in Waverly, but grew up coming up here to Chiillicothe frequently growing up. In 2015, when my husband and I were about to be married, we chose to make our lives here in Chiillicothe. I have been jogging on the bike path, and I have seen needles lying on the bike path. I have experienced someone trying to break into my house. We live on Pate Street. That was us a few weeks back. My daughter has experienced someone coming out of the woods or stumbling out of the woods and scared her as she was riding her bicycle. Just this past Monday, I was jogging in front of Chiillicothe City Schools, and someone walking by almost knocked me into a vehicle. Like I had to dodge this person. I truly believe that this is not where the city's money should be prioritized at this time. Not when we have 2 vacant department heads, as Mr. Creed mentioned. We're down an assistant law director. We're down a wastewater supervisor, as well as other utilities positions. These are positions that keep our city functioning, that keep our city moving. Without wastewater, without the water department, without all of the utilities that we have in our city. And that's why we fought so hard a couple years ago to help fund the wastewater treatment plant, the new facility, and to make sure everything was in on time and adequately performed. The argument that we hear most often is the money comes from different pots. While this statement is misleading, it ultimately all falls under the city's budget. We recently discussed fire truck repairs to our main engine, not a backup engine, our main engine, totaling $21,000. Police tools that totaled $25,000. These two together don't even equal what this one position, what we're being asked to fund, would be one position. We have a crime problem in our city. A lot of people have been trying to say, oh, it's just petty crime. That's all it is. I've got some statistics here showing where we rank in association with Dayton on property crime. We're next to Dayton in line with property crime. We're not Dayton. This is Chiillicothe, Ohio. This is our city. I also put on here on this form, and I'll pass this around, other cities, including Canton, Cleveland, Akron, Toledo. Go figure. When I moved to Toledo at 18 years old, I was told, oh, you got to be careful. You got to be so careful. Guess what? Property crime is higher in Chiillicothe than it is in Toledo. Now, another statistic that I put on here, and these are statistics that were actually, the websites were sent to me by our police chief. So just to give you an idea of where this information came from. These were websites that he told me were very reliable and based on statistical data that's reported. And that's just what's reported. Keep in mind, the neighbor behind me on Caldwell Street just had their garage broken into, and they said, why call the police? What are we going to do? So that's not even reported. So these are just what's being reported. So the other part that I put on here was the city of Chiillicothe, and I put the 5 cities preceding us in population and the 5 cities less than us in population. See that tall one there? That's Chiillicothe. The bigger one is property crime. Yes, sir. Now, violent crime is a little bit lower, okay? But we still rival suburbs of Dayton and Cleveland on violent crime. So it's not just petty crime, which is what people keep trying to say. So in addition to this, we have multiple fire hydrants in our city that are not working properly. We have some that haven't worked in a very long time, including we lost a house a couple years ago in town partially because a fire hydrant was not working properly. The fire department had to go a whole block away to get to a working fire hydrant, and we lost the house. Now, other security concerns. We recently had multiple tornadoes in Ohio. So the state decided to do a citywide testing of tornado sirens. The current sirens that are not working in the city of Chiillicothe, Watt Street, University, North Manor, Central Center, and Brewer Heights. We are short multiple police officers and firefighters, as Mr. Creed mentioned. These positions aren't even all accounted for in the current budget. I firmly believe, along with many of our fellow citizens, safety and security of our city should be our primary focus at this time. I found it interesting that when we received the recommendations for the tax incentive board that the mayor decided to put himself back on that board, even though he had told us he was overwhelmed and he could appoint someone else from the city who was capable of handling this. So why not delegate someone from the city, a capable member of the public? So perhaps the solution should not be funding another position that will be attending meetings and doing paperwork, but perhaps time management is key in looking at the safety of our city. Thank you.
I guess I'll go next. Luke, I guess it kind of comes to you. So I just need an answer. I know I've gotten several emails and texts. Why, and Julie's here too, why did we never talk about this during the campaign? Why is it coming up early in the calendar year and we should have been talking about it? And I know it was talked about in December in the budget. I know that. But we've never really talked about this position. I'm sorry. But anyway, that's what I've had people ask me, was when everyone was campaigning and going around, no one mentioned this position, how bad we needed it. And now we're early in the year and we're putting someone up for this. And that's a hard thing for me to answer. And I know that I wasn't on council last year, but I know it was presented to the budget in December. But that's, like I said, it was just never mentioned to the public when they were campaigning.
I just have one question regarding the position. You currently have, Mayor, you currently have a position as an assistant, administrative assistant. Would that be correct? Clint Boggs. What's his position classified as? But he serves under you as well. Because we get a lot of emails and information from him. So, is his position going to be dissolved and incorporated into this here, or are we creating a whole new position?
Absolutely.
Just to add on that, because does Mr. Boggs currently facilitate meetings for you and disseminate information? And because I've seen emails come through his office through his title addressing information that's coming from you direct to him. Thank you.
I don't think I can say anything any better than what's been said. I have received 3 emails and 1 phone call, and they are all requesting council to oppose the request. Most of them citing there is a lack of safety forces, law enforcement, and such, and that we have things that need to be funded that are really more important. And people are concerned. The people of Chiillicothe are concerned about their safety, and rightfully so. I mean, the statistics would show that. So, again, my emails, 1 phone call, and all opposed.
I'm in support of this position. I feel like the city would run more efficiently. I think he's bogged down. I think as we've been designated World Heritage Site, I think that development and economic growth for this area is going to grow, and I think we need to be prepared for that. And I think this position would serve a great capacity in grant funding and chasing all this funding that we're going to need. And also, I think these are separate conversations. I think we have a healthy budget, and I'm not quite sure why people are so opposed. I'm interested to hear Luke address these questions, but I'm in full support.
Thank you. I would just like to say that I would like to learn a little bit about what more of the alternative options may be to this. I know there are many options, but like I said, I would just like to kind of see in more detail what we can accomplish, in an alternative capacity to the chief of staff role. So, thank you.
Thank you. I think we have some, I'm sure Luke will answer some of these questions here when he shares information at the end. Do we have anyone in the audience that would like to speak at this time?
I'm Don Wilkes, live at 156 Hanover Drive. Listening to the discussions that you have brought forward leaves me with several gaping holes in the rationale for approaching this either one way or the other. Has the functional definition of the position actually been laid out? Does anybody know what that is? Or are you just opposing this on principle that it's a position to, to help the city, to help the mayor? And I've really not heard any point taken refutation of what the position would accomplish versus that, hey, we don't need that. Rather, I've heard many of you jump right into, we don't need that. So are there benefits of this position that have been considered and you've rationally decided that it is unnecessary? The second point that is just a gaping hole here is, will not filling this position keep your daughter from getting scared when she rides her bicycle? Or will it keep you from getting bumped into a car by some passerby on a sidewalk? Those issues, I'm sorry, as traumatic as they might be to the individuals involved, are not really relevant here, are they? If there are truly fire protection issues and police force protection issues that need to be addressed, they need to be addressed in their own right, because saying that not filling this position will automatically improve the safety and security of our city's population is a false equivalency, is it not? It has nothing to do with that. And so I'm just saying it's I just wonder how much of this is rational, based on need, versus partisan petty bickering.
Mr. Wilkes,
There's
what she just handed you is the job description for the position.
And sir, my point in all of that is we need more police officers out there. This position would pull partially from general fund as well as other funds such as utilities. So it would take money away from those departments.
Okay, I'm Beverly Wilkes. I live with Tim at 156 Hanover Drive. I'm confused really on the process because I was here for some of the budget review, and I thought each department had a chance to put forth what they needed. I'm sorry to hear we don't have enough in some place, but I'm confused. Well, why didn't we address that then? And we approved this other position, and now we're just saying, no, we won't fund it. So I certainly want Chiillicothe to be safe. I don't want anybody to experience bad stuff. That's probably unrealistic. I'm kind of confused why these two issues are being knocked together. I know we have limited funds, but we had a whole process to have the department say, this is what we need. And it went through the council and it was approved. So I'm not saying it's not, too late to fix anything. It sounds like it needs to be fixed. Looking at this job of chief of staff, some data shows that it actually is going to save us money. Okay, it's going to provide us a way to do the job better. Now, we have really, really grown, you got to admit. I am darn proud of Chiillicothe and where we are. We're not where we want to be, right? But I don't want us to stop now that we're on a trend. So I would support the position, but I would also be really happy if you would look at the needs of the departments, if it's something that's a life and death or even a danger matter. But why put the two together? And why did we have that whole process if now we're going to go, So, and honestly, I know I'm Democrat, thought I was independent, but anyway, we got a lot of Republicans here. I love you. I do. I love everybody. But if you had a mayor that was Republican, what would you do? Okay.
Ma'am, just to answer a couple of your things, the council didn't approve the position during the budget process. The position was created back in 2002 when Mayor Salsa returned from the House of Representatives. He wanted that position, and it was eliminated when Mayor Everson took over as a non-essential position. So the position is still on the books. It just has not been funded since 2012, and council chose not to fund it as part of the budgeting process. And the reason we bring up police and fire with this is that all these things are competing for general fund money. And wherever we create one thing, we have to give up something else. So a lot of us feel that we need to focus on our safety services first and then come back and relook the other issues and see if we do have some money left over. But yeah, the council during the process did not approve the budget. And Mr. Phillips, who was the finance chair during the whole budget process, he asked the fire department if they needed more people. And they absolutely said that yes, they did, but that it was not approved by the mayor. So we had those discussions during the budget hearing, but that was not the budget that was presented to us. So now we're able to go back and look at those things. Just like you said, we can go back and try to fix things. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to look at the bigger picture and make sure that we're addressing where we feel the priorities should be. We did approve the budget, but we did not approve the chief of staff position during the budget process.
I guess
Okay.
I'll learn, but I kind of want to get things too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was a whole discussion that we had, that we decided not to approve that position as part of the budget. And that if the mayor wanted it, that he come back this year and ask for that again as a separate committee assignment, because we knew that we had shortages in police and fire and we wanted to have those discussions.
Good evening, Anthony Phillips. I reside at 130 Applewood Drive. And I'm the guy that actually asked a new budget to be... I'm sorry, could you bend down and talk to your mic? I hate bending down. I'll do this. How about that? Reminds me of preaching on Good Friday service. I like to walk around when I do it. How about that? All right. Again, good to see everybody. This brings back memories. Not all good, but anyway, I'm teasing. I think, a number of points have been made. I'm going to come at things from a little bit different angle tonight. As far as my opposition to this position, and I do concur with the reasoning that most of the councilmen put forth as far as budget and prioritization and other departments, police, fire, etc. So I do agree with that. When I ask Mayor Feeney in the budget meetings to clarify what we thought we all knew, and is that, do we have a chief of staff, at least on a functional basis? And it was a quick answer, yes. That's Jeff Carmen. Now, I know there's probably going to be some restructuring and things like that, and he'll explain that to us, but we technically have a chief of staff. Okay, technical, functional. How about that word? Okay, so let's be technical then, because I clarified that. But so we have a functional chief of staff already. So, but on a very serious note, and it brings me no pleasure to even talk about this, but as a city councilman, just one term, in my heart, in my thought process of what our job is as providing oversight, one of the things that I left with that concerned me the most, or at least at the top of the list, was all the complaints that we had from many city workers that can be verified. And again, there's a couple sayings. First of all, one is don't shoot the messenger. So as a city councilman, when we advocate and oversee workers for the city, I consider that a very high level responsibility. And when we hear complaints at the numbers and the degree that I personally heard, and for everybody here, you know me, I would rather not be here tonight discussing this. But for the record, I thought I would win re-election, and I did not. Prior to the election, I had sought legal counsel on 4 separate occasions regarding the severity and the number of complaints that I was getting from city workers. That weighs very heavy on me. It should weigh heavy on you as well as the mayor. So my concern is, and first of all, my understanding from previous administrations is that city departments would typically, and correct me if I'm wrong later, Mayor, but would typically answer directly to the mayor. With a functional chief of staff, it's my understanding that they always reported to him. So we have a buffering system. That's my biggest concern, is a layer of and buffer between these complaints that people are having and you not being in the loop. And I think I'll give the mayor the benefit of the doubt that he just doesn't hear what the rest of us have heard, because I can't imagine that he would be okay with that. So, to me, we'll call that the elephant in the room. Again, it brings me no pleasure to say that, but it needs discussed. I think it needs investigation. Accounts of the level of bullying, things being asked of people that are frankly ethically, morally, and at times legally wrong is a great concern. Obviously, I'm not naming names, but it needs looked into. And because of that, I highly discourage the approval of a chief of staff.
I'm going to interject. I appreciate your comments, but this has got a little far afield from what we're supposed to be discussing at this point in time. And the other thing is, I think it would help everybody if folks have actually received written complaints, texts, emails. Those are all public records because they're coming to the public employees. If you could share those with everybody on council, that would really be helpful. So we'd see those and see when they were sent and what they said and what the real complaints are, because that way we can start to address the things you're talking about.
I think, Council President, when I justified my complaint as a chief of staff further insulating and buffering the mayor from the frontline voices of his departments and the city workers is my reasoning, and I was clear on that.
Yeah, I wasn't being critical. I was just saying we were starting to get a little far afield, I thought. So we just want to keep it focused on what we're talking about. But I appreciate your comments.
The mayor would like to speak, so we do need to give him a little bit of time this evening.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah. I'll speak up. Okay. So, we're being live streamed? All right. Okay. Are we on Facebook? Hi, Facebook. Okay. So, lots of questions, not a lot of time to address this. I'm going to start with the questions posed by council. Actually, I'm going to start with Mr. Creed's comments related to other city structures, which is the basis for this whole request. The structure of the city of Chiillicothe is a statutory structure. So when Jeff says Xenia doesn't have a chief of staff, that's because it's not their structure, okay? You have a charter structure, you have structure where there's full-time mayors, and you have structures where there's part-time mayors. So in a charter structure, they might have, what'd you say Xenia had? City manager. So it's in our situation, we just don't have a city manager. So we're comparing apples and oranges when we do that type of thing. Athens was a comparison that Jeff provided on his spreadsheet. Athens has a full-time mayor. That's by statute. They also have a safety service director. They have a deputy safety service director. But the point here is that the structure of our city is such that that management layout that is in the code and has been in the code is the way that our city has been structured. I didn't ask for that structure, but I recognized early on that there were some weaknesses. When I was city auditor, the deputy auditor position was not funded. It was just not funded. When I became city auditor, there were law director positions that were not funded. I've been here 11 years, and I've heard Jeff talk about the 80s and the 90s, and I look at this building, right? And what I recognize is we spend a lot of time looking behind us and not a lot of time looking forward. And the reason positions like this are critical and why they've hurt us over time is because they're essential to the structure of the city, but we've decided, well, we can nickel and dime and not plan for the future and focus on the small things, and hopefully we'll get by. So 2 or 3 years ago, as Jeff mentioned, we funded a planning and development position, right? We started with a full-time, we started with a part-time. It was $20,000 a year, and the priority was the land bank. Then we moved it up to a full-time position. This year alone, the team, Clint, Trisha, and Seth, please stand up. So Clint has been my office manager. He's now filling in as the interim director of planning and development. Trisha is paid as a secretary, but she's essentially been the planning and development director part 2 because Clint is also the office manager, and Seth is the aforementioned clerk. We got $4 million awarded just like a month ago. It's because we invested in positions like this, right? So when we're talking about the thing that I love about this, everything that's been said is making my point, is that by investing in the right positions, you guys can sit down. By investing in the right positions and looking to the future, we actually, somebody said save money, but the point is we bring in more revenue. If we say, by not funding a single position, this is the only management position, by the way, in the city that's not funded. And when the auditor's office was not funded, the deputy auditor, I said we should fund it because it's necessary and important. This budget's $40 million, and to not have a deputy in the auditor's office is insane. The same with the law director's office. Funding those positions is essential. Now, for me, I love my job and what I do, and I do it as much as I can. And so I wish I could do it all and be everywhere that I can be and do it all. Now, several years ago, the question was posed, why wasn't this brought up in the campaign? Anybody who's been listening has heard me say this for years. And 2 or 3 years ago, there was an action by council to increase the pay of the auditor from $50-something thousand to $80-something thousand. It's still not even as high as the directors in the city, but it's higher, and it's a better compensation. This action here today is not about my salary. I knew what the salary would be when I ran every time. From the day I started with the city in 2000, what year did I start with the city? 13 maybe? To today, I think my pay has gone up maybe $6,000, right? It's a minimal percent. But the point is that the pay is commensurate with the fact that there should be a chief of staff. The point about communication makes my point further. When people are overloaded with work, communication doesn't flow well. My point is what we should do is invest in people like this. My plan would be to make Clint the chief of staff, Trisha the planning and development director, and Seth would stay in the planning clerk position. Just yesterday we got notice that we were one of 30 out of 260 applicants that got a salt shed grant to put over at the Rennick site. It is 2024 and we don't have a salt shed. We are sitting in this, I won't say it because I'm streaming, in this crappy building because we haven't been planning for the future. There are essential positions in the city that are missing, and I think this is one of them. I don't disagree. Everybody says we should think about restructuring. We should think about doing these things. I don't disagree. Let's do that too. But here's the important thing. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. We don't have to say, well, we can't fund this small position or this single position out of a, will you pass that down? This is just a little summary, but what is the most important thing there is that our general fund carryover last year was over $5 million. When these positions were cut and not funded, our carryover was less than $500,000. So since 2012, we've gone from $500,000 to $5 million in carryover. But to think about things like World Heritage and think about the future and think about bringing in these grants and to say, well, what we should really do is think about the single police or fire position. And these are the positions that brought in the $1.8 million police grant last year. To say that we can't walk and chew gum at the same time is just a disservice to the city. This doesn't affect me personally. My pay doesn't change. I won't work any less. But I'm telling you that these folks in this room deserve this pay because they're doing a great job for the city. And the city, even more importantly, deserves this pay. So if there is an effort or a concept that we should restructure the city, I highly encourage it. But what I would also encourage is that we think about what we can do best for the city right now, which I think is funding this position. We will bring in that $4 million and we have to administer it, right? It comes into the city and we have to administer it. And that takes staff. It's a, I guess, unfortunate byproduct of bringing in $4 million. But these guys are kicking it, knocking it out of the park. And I think that if we continue to compensate them in secretarial roles or clerk roles, the city will suffer for it over time. I think I had a couple more questions that I didn't answer. And I just want to clarify. I've heard people say positions were eliminated. I've heard people say various things. This position has never been eliminated. It just wasn't funded. I think it was the person was either terminated or left the job, but it's never been eliminated. Similarly to the deputy auditor position, the law director positions, they're always on the books. They've just been funded. References to how we have other vacant positions, I would advocate that a proper management structure would alleviate some of that. It would help with communications because when we stretch people out and stretch them out thin, which is, I think, the appropriate thing to do when we were in fiscal caution, as was earlier referenced at the last council meeting, you do have to cut and do what you can with what you have. But to do that when you don't have to do it anymore just hinders the city. And I think we have the potential as a city to be more. The dissolution versus whatever. So and this is the ordinance that, if you want to pass that around, Jeff mentioned earlier. This is the structure for the mayor's department. So it says you have a secretary. It says you have a development director. It says you have two clerks. These are the positions. When I came in, we had a single HR person. We had, but the HR department for 250 people, is a busy place. So one of the assigned clerks to the mayor, it's not on paper that way, but clerks can do duties as assigned. So the clerk is now the HR assistant. That's one of the staffing positions. Not created, just assigned, right? Similarly for the planning and development clerk, it's a clerk as assigned, and then it's assigned to the planning department. And you'll see throughout there, you asked what happens to his position. So right now, he's the office manager and he's the interim director. He's answering the phone calls. He's also representing me in meetings. It is literally two jobs. He's doing well, he doesn't complain, but it's two jobs. And so the proposal as proposed is that on the ordinance that you have, nothing changes. It's just you fund the vacant position. So what you would end up with is a chief of staff, a planning and development director, a planning and development clerk, HR director, HR clerk, and a secretary for the office. That's the final structure. Jeff has done admirably as safety and service director. when we hired him, I posted that job. When I got in, I said, I'm going to hire from the public. We're going to post that job. We had 2 people come in. He had former law enforcement background, and the other applicant had like a master's in public administration. And my goal was getting somebody like a master's in public administration, be like a city manager type of person. But knowing the situation we were in, knowing the importance of law enforcement, we went with a safety and service director. He has done an amazing job in that position. But the focus on that job is safety and service. You're supervising and you're the direct report for the police and fire department and trash. That's a lot, right? And so the reason I'm advocating for this position, like I said, it's my workload won't change. But the amount of work that person can do, the way that person can move the city forward, I just think it's really important. And so regardless of it being funded, the work remains and the future of the city remains. And I just think it's an important thing. So if we look around and say, we don't like that structure, let's look to change it. But as it's structured now, we have the personnel, we have the request, and I think it's a prime opportunity to capture what we've been doing and move to the future on other opportunities we have. I'm over time, I apologize.
We are a couple minutes over. We thought that 45 minutes would be enough, but maybe it wasn't. And I do want to thank everyone for sharing information, all of council, those of you citizens that came in, and the mayor. We're not ready to put this back on the agenda this evening, so I will not ask that it be put back on the agenda yet. Thank you.
That's correct. You could take it off the table and then move to not read if you want to do that, to move it out a little, another time period. But the way the rules read, if it isn't taken off the table by the second meeting, then it automatically dies, is what it says.
Thank you. I'm reading the parliamentary procedure rules here. I think we all double check each other.
It's Rule 13, 13A, and then 13B is what says the motion to take from the table again before council a motion or series of adhering motions that urgent reasons were laid on the table. A question laid on the table must be taken from the table by the end of the next regular meeting and can be read or it dies. Is what it says. That concludes the review session. We're a little bit late in starting our regular meeting, but I'll call the council meeting to order at this point in time. And just let everyone know that we are having this meeting on Wednesday because we moved it from Monday mainly because of the eclipse and knew we wouldn't have a quorum, so we went ahead and moved it. And I appreciate everybody working with us to make sure we could schedule this and do it at a time that would work for everyone. We are at 26 South Paint Street here in Chiillicothe, and I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Thank you, President Shoemaker. Bennett.
Present.
Payne.
Here.
Nickerson.
Here.
Barnes.
Here.
McKeever.
Here.
Dement.
Here.
Henderson.
Here.
Kroll.
Here.
Creed.
Here.
Next, I will ask Mr. McKeever to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. The minutes have been distributed, and I hope everyone's had a chance to take a look at the minutes. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections? Hearing none, I would ask for a motion to approve the minutes. Mr. Dement, seconded by Mr. McKeever. Clerk will call the roll.
Bennett,
Yes.
Payne,
Yes.
Nickerson,
Yes.
Barnes,
Yes.
McKeever,
Yes.
Dement,
Yes.
Henderson,
Yes.
Kroll,
Yes.
Creed.
Yes.
We will now move to reports of committees. Development Committee, Mr. Dement.
Thank you, President Shoemaker. Development Committee has one item on tonight's agenda. It is item number 6, and it's the first reading of an ordinance authorizing the Ohio Department of Transportation to complete the Ross 159 Bridge Street project since PID 113013, establishing the city as the local public agency and confirming the city's cooperation and agreement to maintain the project. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Engineering Committee, Mr. Barnes.
Thank you, President Shoemaker. Engineering has nothing on tonight's agenda and nothing to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Finance and Technology Committee, Mr. Prohl.
We have nothing on tonight's agenda, so we have nothing to report. Thanks.
Thank you. Human Resources Committee, Ms. Payne. And I hope we don't rehash the whole review committee or review meeting, but I'll turn it over to Ms. Payne.
Thank you, President Shoemaker. Currently, Human Resources, we do not have anything on the agenda, but we will put an item back on the agenda this evening. Earlier this evening, we did have a review meeting to review the Chief of Staff position, which was assignment 24-012. And I will ask this evening that was tabled at our last council meeting. And I will ask this evening that we put that back on the agenda at its second read tonight. I want to thank everyone that came and shared information, including council and Mayor Feeney. So I will not rehash all of that. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Parks and Rec Committee, Dr. Henderson.
Thank you, President Shoemaker. Parks, Rec, and Tourism has one item on tonight's agenda, and that is regarding adding an ordinance associated with feeding wildlife on public lands. A couple of quick comments on this. I've been asked, reasons why, and as far as there not being any detriment to specifically waterfowl by feeding them. So feeding them, and most folks will feed them bread, etc. This creates malnourishment in the waterfowl themselves. It also creates dependency. It increases their risk of developing diseases. And then you have environmental degradation, such as soil erosion, unbalanced nitrogen levels, etc. You have water pollution. You also have delayed migration of the waterfowl themselves, overcrowding, motor vehicle accidents, all of the above. So if you care about waterfowl, stop feeding them. We have 2 upcoming assignments, both related to the cabooses, one discussing funding them and one discussing repairing the roof, I do believe. And last thing I'll mention is next weekend is the Buck 50, so watch out for runners. Thank you.
Thank you. Later. Safety Service Committee, Mr. Creed.
Thank you, President Shoemaker. We have two items on the agenda tonight, both in their second reading. One is ordinance appropriating $25,813.80 for the police department for part of their CAD system. The other is appropriating $25,000 for repairs to engine one for the Chiillicothe Fire Department. So those will let go to the third reading. We had a committee meeting before the review session. We discussed 24-026, which is accepting money for when the police department sold scrap metal to Rumpke and appropriating that money. And the second one was 24-028, and that was the 911 committee a resolution to approve that. And that's basically just us, along with the county, submitting information to the state so they can develop a plan to move us from an enhanced to a next-gen 911 system in the coming years. So both of those made it through committee, so they should be on the next agenda. That's all I have.
Thank you. Utilities Committee, Mr. McKeever.
Thank you, President Shoemaker. Utilities has nothing on the agenda tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. City Services Committee, Ms. Nickerson.
Thank you, President Shoemaker. We have nothing on the agenda tonight. However, we did meet on March 27th to discuss assignment 24024 service truck repair, which passed. The legislation is ready. For some reason, I don't know why it didn't make it on the agenda, but I would like to move that we add that resolution to this agenda. Okay, it's stuck at the law director's office. Okay, then we'll just wait. The second thing we discussed was assignment 24024, or 22, rental policy for the Chiillicothe trolley. That assignment was denied in committee as it is not our responsibility to pass policy as legislation. However, it is my understanding Transit is looking at those options, and I move to send it back to the clerk.
Are you saying it was denied by the committee?
Mm-hmm.
At this point in time, though, you're making a motion then to send it back, you said?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second to that motion? Second, Mr. Barnes. Any discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Bennett,
Yes.
Payne,
Yes.
Nickerson,
Yes.
Barnes,
Yes.
McKeever,
Yes.
Dement,
Yes.
Henderson,
Yeah.
Kroll,
Yes.
Creed.
Yes.
Very good, thank you. Also, we have an assignment regarding refuse. It's 24023. I would like to call a committee meeting Monday the 22nd at 5:45. And that wraps up our report. Thank you.
Thank you. Community Affairs Committee, Ms. Bennett.
We don't have anything on the agenda today, President Shoemaker, but next meeting we'll have about our language to help us understand when we postpone or cancel meetings. And I did get that from the law director today, so thank you.
Thank you. Report of officials, Mayor Feeney.
Thank you, President Shoemaker. I don't have any report tonight.
Thank you. Auditor Spetnagel.
I do not have anything on the agenda or anything to report other than income taxes due on Monday, April the 15th. We'll have extended hours and be open until 6 o'clock on Monday. We can help you file those taxes, and Friday. Friday will be open until 6 as well. You can drop those off, or you can bring it in, bring your WT, and we can help you actually complete those forms. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. With that happy news, we'll move on to the law director.
We do not have an official report this evening. Nothing's happening additionally from what we always do, and plus we're still trying to wait for the bar results to come out in a couple of weeks. Thanks.
Thank you. Now we'll move to audience participation. Any person wishing to address council must first provide his or her name and address. Comments are generally limited to 5 minutes, and I'll give you a warning when there's 1 minute remaining. So anyone that would like to address council is welcome to do so.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Patty Schaefer, and I live at 3590 State Route 207 here in Chiillicothe, Ohio. And I have a master's in taxation from Capital Law School. I currently work as an accountant. I work a couple days in Columbus and 3 days at home. Previously, I worked as an adjunct up at Ohio University for a semester, and then I taught down at the University of Rio Grande. And I'm also teaching a couple classes for them also right now. So you know a little bit about what I do, but I'm also a volunteer down in the park. If I make it through this summer, it'll be my 9th year doing that. How did I do that? To begin with, I was walking and there was a duck that was hurt. It was a pekin, a white one. And so I felt really bad for it. So I went and got it something to eat and brought it back. And there was several of us trying to fix it up. It did get better. And then Clint Boggs, and let me tell you something about Clint Boggs, and he's left now. But I can advocate that he is a wonderful person, and he is a wonderful manager, and he can manage anything. And so, but I worked for Clint Boggs as well as a bunch of other volunteers here in Chiillicothe. Clint had volunteers set up to go down, and there must have been 11 to 15 of us at least. And I wasn't part of the cleanup group, but they'd pick up garbage, et cetera, down there. He had rules set up, and they were set up on wood things down there. One was don't feed bread to the ducks. Pretty much everybody knows that. But when Clint left, they tore those down. But there's many times I would call Clint, and I would say, you know, the swan has a hook in her mouth. We need to get people in here right now. And he would come down himself and do it. Of course, this isn't about Clint, but I'm just telling you kind of what the kind of things that we have done. You know, the big mouse one, a couple of us wrestled him down. He had something in his foot, but all kinds of things. But one of the things I also do is feed. And Clint had called me up and knew that I was down there doing it. And I didn't know Clint when he started the job. And, you know, he said, you know, we really appreciate what you're doing, et cetera, et cetera. And so I was the first volunteer. And I'm kind of like the one that is still doing it. The others kind of have left or whatever. Probably about the time Clint left. No organization now in doing that. But we have, as far as waterfowls down there, we have a hodgepodge, okay? We've got Canadian geese. I don't care for the Canadian geese too much, but they're protected federally. And so you can't do a whole lot with them. Or the goslings. You've got domestic ducks down there. Domestic means that they're barn ducks, they're Pekin ducks. You know, somebody dropped them off. Easter comes, oh, let's go buy a couple ducks. And then when they get too much to take care of in the house, they take them down there and dump them. But you've got domestic ducks down there, and they need fed. Along with the swans, they need fed. And I think that the swans was actually put around here by Beth, and I can't remember her last name, but she was on city council. Is it Henderson? Neal. Yes, it's Beth Neal, exactly. And I've called her and talked to her too when I need help, but her father had died, and his wish is that swans stay on the lake down there. And they did it in remembrance of her father, and you probably know that too. And so the swans, they're big birds. They've got to be fed. And I've done this with mostly my own money. I know that Clint, the Parks and Recreation, would also come across with some money down there a little bit to help occasionally. Not that often, though. But I've done it with my own money, as well as the other volunteers who feed down there. And I try very, very hard not to feed the geese or whatever. They are dirty, and I'd like for them to leave also. So you kind of know what we've all been doing down there. Now, I know that when the dogs, you guys heard the dogs, and the dogs come in down there. And the dogs did a wonderful job of getting rid of the geese and, leaving the other birds there. The ducks, which are very few now, just because people have stolen them, they've killed them, et cetera, et cetera. So there's not a lot of ducks down there, but there's still enough that needs to be fed. But anyway, the dog people would come in, but I think that they quit. They said that it's too far, but I think a big part of that is the goslings. When the dogs come in, it seems like in the springtime is when we seem to go try to do this, and you've got gosling, you've got baby ducks. The dogs are not killers, don't get me wrong, but they're just still dogs. They're running around. If you've got those goslings there, and the goslings are federally protected, okay? And so I want rid of the Canadian geese probably as much as you do. I would like to leave the ducks and the swans still there. And why is that? Because it's a part of Chiillicothe. They've been down there, okay? What do we have here in Chiillicothe for the kids to do and for the people to do? We got a park. That's what we have. And what about the lady down in the East End? She piles her kids into a wagon, and she pulls the wagon up there on Friday or Saturday night and buys them a pizza, and their kids stay out there and they play with the ducks and they feed the ducks, and it's a good time. That's all they got. I grew up on South Brownell Street. Believe me, I know. And I pulled myself up out of there, if you could say that, okay? I have 3 degrees, and I've worked and worked and worked. And I care for our park. I care for our city. So I'm asking you to please continue letting us feed the ducks, the geese. So what's the solution to the geese? And so I'm going to tell you some things here. I got to put my glasses down. One of the things that's got to stop is bringing in piles of corn and just leaving them there. These people on Saturday or whatever, they will put those piles. When I feed, I pick it up and I know how to do it. Oh, like that. And they go. I feed corn and the pellets go. And then they scatter and they eat it. But when you empty a bag of feed out here and there, they're going to feast and feast and feast on that. Of course, the dogs. So here's another thing about the dogs coming in. Why do we always get in the springtime or we get in the summertime to hire the dogs when the goslings are there? And then those people don't want to do it. The dog people don't want to do it. And I have called a couple of them and I have talked to them. I told them I wasn't representing the city of Chiillicothe, but just I was trying to gather information why that didn't work. And he said, that person quit on us yet. But when it really come down to it, behind the scenes, the problem's the goslings. And they don't want to hurt the goslings because they're federally protected. Why don't we hire the dog people? Or maybe there's dog people down here someplace and find some in the fall. And we'll use them in the fall or at the end of summer and through the winter, and we can get rid of them like that. So by the time that spring comes, when the goslings are born, we don't have to have the dogs there per se and let those goslings grow up, because that's why they don't want to do them. They're federally protected. I know, I'm very, but it would be inhumane for you to just quit feeding these domestic ducks. And if you decide that's absolutely what you have to do, I'm asking you, I've been a volunteer. Allow me to at least feed them. The geese don't like me, and I really don't like the geese either, and they know it. I don't hurt them or do anything, but they know that I don't feed them. Sometimes I say bad things to them, but I know how to feed them. So you kind of know who I am. Clint knows who I am. Clint has my phone number. Please allow me to continue feeding them. And just 4 other items. I think you, Mayor, at the beginning, you put in aerators in down there when you first started your mayorship, but they've not been on for the last 2 years. So what that means for me is that I have to go down there and water them. So I'd like for them in the winter when the pond freezes, to the aerators.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate it.
I know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's my second time seeing some of you after this afternoon. In light of that planning commission meeting, I have some sincere, honest questions. I know some of you, you're not going to be able to tell me right tonight, but email me, get a hold of me somehow. My questions are...
Could I have your name and address, please, for the record?
My apologies.
That's
Doug
okay.
McCord, 565 West 5th Street. At that planning commission meeting regarding the facility that's being proposed for East Main Street, researching what was going on in town, I had discovered that there's 11 different recovery centers in Chiillicothe, Ohio. Now, I had somebody, my wife asked me, you know, are these recovery centers, how many of them are for profit, purely for profit? How many of them are nonprofit? What's their success rate? Why are we having to build this facility on East Main Street if we have 11 recovery centers already in town? And also, are visits to these recovery centers, is this in lieu of jail time? Are these recovery centers popping up because we have people trying to fulfill criminal sentences? Is, you know, if you go through rehab, we won't put you in jail, kind of thing. I would like to know those kind of things. Are these things regulated at all? I mean, why do we have 11 inside a town of 22,000 people? So those are my questions. I know the back end of this is just plain and simple, it's drugs. So if somebody could find out those questions, Mr. President, is that a committee assignment or whatever?
Mr. McCord, my
Yes.
name is Dan DeMint. I'm the 6th Ward representative who kind of initiated this whole public situation here. You know, I've noticed the same thing you've noticed as far as there being a lot of ADAMH related facilities within a 1.52 mile area of this new facility. And we really don't have a good answer for you right now as far as, why are there so many? Why do we need so many within an area? What, your questions we don't have good answers to right now, but we're committed to trying to find a good answer for that for you. Okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Being the nature of the facility, is it quasi clinical? I mean, shouldn't they have some kind of regulatory permission to be here? I mean, it just seems like when you're dealing with healthcare, and that's the buzzword, this is mental health, that certainly they have the credentials, the property, surely it's regulated for that purpose.
Because
they're
we're streaming,
popping up everywhere.
Because we're streaming publicly, I'm not going to ask you to give an email address or anything, because that would go out to a lot of people.
I haven't done that. I didn't do it this afternoon. I won't do it now.
What I would say, and my suggestion would be, after this meeting, talk to the folks on council here. You can give them the information, and I'm sure these folks will be happy to try to work on whatever questions you've got and get you some answers.
Yep.
As Mr. DeMint points out, may not have them all right now, but they'll be happy to try to get them for you.
Okay, and not to beat a dead horse, but like I said this afternoon, there's one location in a shopping area, okay, trying to avoid the name, right across the parking lot from this recovery center is a head shop with all the utensils you would need to be a drug addict. If this facility goes in down on East Main Street, then council's going to have to look at, just like you wouldn't put a bar next to a school, marijuana I know we're talking about more dangerous drugs than marijuana, but the temptation we're going to have to regulate around this facility what you have around that facility, so you don't entice people to continue their addictions and things like that.
I appreciate your comment. I mean, folks, I think if you get them your information and get them any questions you have, I'm sure the council members be happy to explore and get you answers to those questions for you as soon as they can.
Thank you.
Mr. McCord, if you stay until after the meeting, I would be happy to exchange emails and try to answer whatever I can for you, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Donna Meyer, and my address is 179 Church Street. And I just have a question regarding the feeding ordinance for the animals in the park. Who's going to enforce the ordinance?
So we did reach out to the Chiillicothe Police Department, and they will, be patrolling that, and they would be the ones enforcing it.
I was wondering about that because I know there's been so much concern in the past about we don't have enough police coverage, and is that just going to be stretching them kind of thin because people are, feeding the ducks, and so just something to consider.
Yeah, and that was addressed with them, and they're in support of it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I wanted to talk also about the wildlife, because we've had a lot of people talking tonight about, Ms. Wilkins, I'm going to use you, how we talk about one thing and then another. Bill Bonner brought this to us, and we're supporting Bill from the parks. And I was going, have you talked to Bill about some of your concerns and some suggestions? Okay. Yeah. And and he came and his presentation kind of got this started. So I just wanted to, because you're talking about us working together earlier. And yeah, we're hearing this and we're trying to work and support that. So you're looking, because like you were saying about us not working, it's turned so political. I mean, this is not us trying to do anything, but we're trying to support Bill and the park.
We'll leave that for a discussion with you and Mr. Bonner then. Thank you. I know, but we don't want to, I mean, okay, thank you. Thank you.
Hi, David White, 179 Church Street. Want to talk about the geese ordinance. I appreciate you, Councilman Henderson, responding to some of the concerns that were brought up in previous meetings. And I think we've kind of addressed some of the issues that creates the problem. Most folks will feed them bread. That was one of your comments. Now that's a good point to try to avoid that, because it's not healthy for any of the birds. And as was mentioned, there were signs down there, and if folks would just feed them cracked corn or other things that were healthy for them, that would be ideal. So that should be what we strive for, not to criminalize feeding them something that's healthy for them. The algal blooms, sure, they're a risk, but that's, in the time that I've been here, that lake has always been healthy. It's never had a bloom that's created an unhealthy water condition. The discharges out of that lake certainly are not damaging the Scioto River. There's greater water quality challenges that we have than the geese being there and pooping. And I think that's the bottom line. It's not a matter of overcrowding or vehicle accidents. It's about residents. You got to do something because there's poop all over the place. I think that's what resonated when it was brought to the mayor's attention. I think that's what's driving this. I think the geese have every right to be there. I'd like to see them protected. I'd like to see them be appreciated, and that the people deal with the part of geese being. Creating and making it a crime to feed them, I think, is something that's well beyond anything that would benefit the city or any of our residents. But I do appreciate you responding, and we will continue, and I will continue to support the geese. Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
My name is Jamie Brown. I live at 98 Douglas Avenue. A few things. I have a lot of free time now, so I have room to complain. Sorry. Website.
I'm going to hold you to 5 minutes, though, so
Okay.
no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I have some notes, so hopefully we can do that. Website, please update. It's very annoying, and yeah, it should be up to date. I should be able to, and there's no disrespect to the clerk staff, but we shouldn't need to get emails. We should be able to go on our city's website and get the agenda and get ordinances, and I shouldn't get failed messages when I'm trying to figure out what the laws are in my community. And again, I understand you're busy, but I'm not, and so I have time to complain. Nonprofit funding committee. I would love for y'all to get that started. We have a meeting that's due this month, and I know some folks who would like to give some presentations to solicit some funds. I feel compelled to kind of appreciate Clint, Tricia, and Seth. I kind of had the same feeling about Osti when she was here. When you have individual people generating millions and millions of dollars to make the things change in the city that tens of thousands of people enjoy, it's thankless work, and so I think we should take opportunities to thank them. I want to throw out just a little tidbits about the opioid conversation. I'm not going to get into the whole mess about the facility, but I heard there's a concern about 11 facilities in town. I'm not sure if you're aware. David Yost was a co-plaintiff for a historic lawsuit against the opioid industry, about $17 billion history making. The reason they won that is because there are lots and lots of victims to the overprescription and overselling of opioids. And so I hear folks concerned that we have 11. I'm telling you, as a person who works with marginalized folks and runaway and homeless youth and people susceptible to addiction, 11 is not enough. I would like to triple that. We have a lot of people in Southeast Ohio, all throughout Appalachia, who need addiction services and are unable to access them. Tens of thousands of people in this area affected. 11 facilities can't even dent that. And I mean this disrespect. We as a society aren't having that conversation, so I understand if that is news to you, but so take that as you will. What I'll try to use my remaining time for is to make a principled argument. I struggled when I sat there. This idea of principles in politics versus policy and procedure, right? So I think the principles in politics, like that's what an election's for, right? What we believe and so on. And I just want to say, I want to do it as non-confrontational as possible. Everyone here was elected because your neighbors trust you to get the job done, right? That includes Luke. And the job was to help administer policies to make the city better. His arguments won. I think he makes a compelling argument, one that I believe you need a strong administration to support safety services. To Donna's point, it really does seem like an ideological contradiction. On one hand, we're concerned about public safety, but we are spending resource and time on ducks in the midst of a conversation about a fiscal crisis concerning public safety. I hope, and I'm not trying to be aggressive, but there is some, reasoning failure there, right? It's math. Doesn't add up. Thank you.
That concludes the audience participation. I will move to old business. I was wondering, Ms. Payne, at this time, if you'd like to make your motion to remove the ordinance from the table that was tabled from the last meeting so that we can have that on the agenda as we move toward the final readings or the next
Thank you,
readings.
President Shoemaker. Yes, I would. I'd like to make a motion to take assignment number 24-012 off the table and put it back onto the agenda.
Is there a second? Mr. Prohl? Any further discussion? I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Bennett,
Yes.
Payne,
Yes.
Nickerson,
Yes.
Barnes,
Yes.
McKeever,
Yes.
Dement,
Yes.
Henderson,
Yes.
Kroll,
Yes.
Creed.
Yes.
The ordinance will be added to the agenda for tonight. It'll be the second read, yes. Were there any petitions or correspondence?
Thank you, President Shoemaker. I have not received anything.
Is there any new business to come before council this evening? Not hearing any new business to come before the council, we'll move to the reading of ordinances and resolutions.
Thank you, President Shoemaker. Item number 1 is the second reading of an ordinance appropriating $25,813.80 for costs related to the Chiillicothe Police Department's annual Zurcher maintenance and fees, and for the purchase of AVL software for the computer-aided dispatch system, and declaring an emergency.
The ordinance shall move to the next agenda.
Item number 2 is the second reading of an ordinance appropriating $25,000 for repairs to the Chiillicothe Fire Department Engine 1 and declaring an emergency.
The ordinance shall move to the next agenda.
Item number 3 is the second reading of an ordinance adding section 505.19, feeding of wildlife prohibited, to the codified ordinances of the city of Chiillicothe, Ohio.
The ordinance shall move to the next agenda.
Item number 4 is the first reading of an ordinance appropriating $25,000 for the payment of invoices relating to elevator and tornado siren repairs and declaring an emergency.
The ordinance will move to the next agenda.
Item number 5 is the first reading of an ordinance appropriating $31,500 for budgeted 2022 engineering services and declaring an emergency.
The ordinance will move to the next agenda.
Item number 6 is the first reading of an ordinance authorizing the Ohio Department of Transportation to complete the Ross 159 0.41 project, PID 113013, establishing the city as local public agency and confirming the city's cooperation and agreement to maintain the project.
The ordinance will move to the next agenda.
Item number 7 is the first reading of an ordinance accepting and appropriating $1,091.34 received from the Ross County Auditor's Office for the city's share of drug fines in Ross County, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
The ordinance will move to the next agenda.
Item number 8 is the first reading of a resolution authorizing the appropriate city officials to apply for and enter into an agreement with the Ohio Public Works Commission Grant Funds Program for the year 2025, accepting grant funds if awarded and declaring an emergency.
The ordinance will move to the next agenda.
Item number 9 is the second reading. Is a second reading of an ordinance authorizing the mayor's office to fill the mayor's chief of staff position, appropriating $70,000 to fund the position through the end of 2024 and declaring an emergency.
The ordinance will move to the next agenda. That completing all of the reading of ordinances and resolutions, I would ask for a motion to adjourn. Ms. Bennett, seconded by Dr. Henderson. Clerk will call the roll.
Bennett.
Yes.
Payne.
Yes.
Nickerson.
Yes.
Barnes.
Yes.
McKeever.
Yes.
Dement.
Yes.
Henderson.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Creed.
Yes.
We are adjourned.